Media fact-checker. US-led Middle East conflict escalates with Iran attacks on energy infrastructure and global response. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. European leaders, UK, France, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, and Japan issued a joint statement condemning Iran for attacks on commercial shipping vessels and civilian energy facilities, including the Strait of Hormuz closure. Iran retaliated against an Israeli strike on its South Pars natural gas field by attacking a major Qatari LNG facility, Ras Laffan, in Qatar, causing 17% of Qatar's LNG export capacity to be eliminated, valued at $20 billion, 28 billion Australian dollars. Brent crude oil price briefly rose above $119 per barrel on Thursday due to escalating tensions. Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi met US President Donald Trump at the White House, offering Japan's readiness to coordinate efforts to stabilize the Middle East and secure the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's Foreign Minister, Said Abbas Araghchi, vowed retaliation with zero restraint if civilian infrastructure was struck again. But not all outlets told the same story. Source SMH reports US media contradicted Trump's claim that he told Israeli PM Netanyahu don't do that about the South Pars strike, stating Washington was aware of and supported the Israeli attack in advance. No contradictions found between Thej and SMH for consensus facts. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. ABC staff 24-hour strike over pay and conditions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Over 2,000 ABC staff walked off the job for a 24-hour strike on Wednesday, the first in 20 years. The strike began at 11 a.m. on Wednesday, affecting TV, radio, and digital services across Australia. ABC switched to BBC World Service programming to replace flagship shows including Asterisk 7.30 with Sarah Ferguson Asterisk and Asterisk News Breakfast Star. ABC radio stations played pre-recorded music, e.g., Asterisk Waiting for a Star to Fall Asterisk by Boy Meets Girl on Melbourne Sydney mornings, and automated messages during the strike. Triple J played Asterisk Express Yourself Asterisk by NWA at 11 a.m., referencing its 1990 strike-era protest against ABC censorship. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Triple J played Asterisk Express Yourself Asterisk at 11 a.m. as a strike protest, while Article 3 says Triple J hosts announced automated messaging Asterisk before Asterisk 11 a.m. and the song began at 11 a.m. Article 2 reports the 7 p.m. news bulletin's fate was unclear, but Article 1 implies they were replaced by BBC content or local hosts like Findlay Denny. Article 1 claims ~2000 staff struck, while Article 2 specifies ~1 200 MEAA members, journalists, out of ~4 500 total staff, implying fewer than 2,000 total strikers. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Pauline Hanson's One Nation surge benefiting Labour in Australian elections via electoral system dynamics. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Pauline Hanson stated it's just the start regarding her political momentum after One Nation's vote surge. One Nation secured 20% of the vote in recent elections, while Labour's vote remained stable at 39%. Liberal Party vote collapsed to 19% in the same election cycle. Greens vote increased to 11% in the election. One Nation's protest votes in outer suburbs and regional areas, e.g., metropolitan Adelaide, often redistribute preferences back to Labour under Australia's electoral system. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Gold Coast Mayor Tom Tate's Mar-a-Lago visit and Trump Tower development ethics controversy. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Gold Coast Mayor Tom Tate received gifts from the Trump Organization during a February 2024 visit to Mar-a-Lago, including meals, accommodation, and airport transfers valued at $500 or more, as declared in his register of interests. The Trump Organization paid for Tate's meals, accommodation, and vehicle transfers at Mar-a-Lago between February 12 to 14, 2024, during a broader overseas trip that included Italy, the UAE, and the USA. Tate met with US President Donald Trump and Eric Trump at Mar-a-Lago during his visit. The Trump Organization signed a $1.5 billion deal with Australian developer Altus Property Group, CEO David Young, for a Trump-branded 91-story tower in Surfers Paradise, Gold Coast, just days after Tate's Mar-a-Lago visit. The proposed Trump Tower in Surfers Paradise would include a 6-star resort hotel, 270 luxury apartments, a retail plaza, and a beach club, and developers claim it will be the tallest building in Australia. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the Trump Organization paid for Tate's flights, while Article 2 notes the exact cost of flights was yet to be revealed and ratepayers paid for them. Article 1 does not mention Tate's attendance at the Day USA trade event in Los Angeles, while Article 2 explicitly states he attended this event as part of his US trip. Article 1 does not reference Jeffrey Watson SC's legal opinion that Tate must exclude himself from Trump Tower votes, while Article 2 includes this opinion in detail. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia faces potential fuel supply disruptions due to Middle East conflict and regional export restrictions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia imports around 90% of its fuel, with Malaysia as its third largest supplier of refined fuels, Newscom Australia, and top source of crude oil, Guardian. Malaysia's government stated it would prioritise domestic fuel needs before considering exports to Australia, per a Malaysian embassy spokesman quoted in both the Australian Financial Review, via Guardian, and Newscom Australia. South Korea has capped petrol and diesel exports to safeguard its own supply, Newscom Australia, and China directed refineries to pause or scale back exports, Newscom Australia. Energy Minister Chris Bowen acknowledged some petrol stations in Australia are running low on fuel, with NSW reporting 107 stations without diesel and 42 without fuel at all, Guardian. Bowen stated Australia's fuel supply is not currently disrupted but warned governments have powers to ration petrol if supplies are severely disrupted, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Malaysia is Australia's top source of crude oil, while Newscom Australia states Malaysia is Australia's third largest supplier of refined fuels, no contradiction in ranking, but Guardian clarifies Malaysia's role in crude oil supply. The Guardian states Malaysia produces and refines significantly more fuel than domestic needs, while Newscom Australia does not provide this specific detail. The Guardian reports 107 NSW stations lack diesel and 42 lack fuel, while Newscom Australia does not mention specific station shortages in NSW. This story was covered by The Guardian and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. First NFL regular season game in Australia at MCG on September 11, 2025. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The first NFL regular season game in Australia will be played between the Los Angeles Rams and San Francisco 49ers. The match will take place at the Melbourne Cricket Ground, MCG, on Friday, September 11, 2025. Kickoff time is 10:35 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, Friday, September 11th. General admission tickets start at $140, with standing room tickets at $95. Partner pre-sales for tickets begin on Wednesday, April 1, 2025, at 9 a.m. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the game is on September 11th, but Article 3 incorrectly mentions September 10th as the date. Article 1 mentions the game fitting into the NFL's Thursday night time slot in the US, while Article 2 and Article 3 do not reference this. Article 2 claims the game is the first of up to 3 NFL games in Victoria over the next several years, but this is not mentioned in Articles 1 or 3. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. NSW introduces laws to crush illegal high-speed e-bikes and related policy debates. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. NSW government will introduce legislation today to give police and transport for NSW powers to seize and crush e-bikes operating over 25 km per hour, including throttle-only high-powered models, even if bought in error. The NSW laws include roadside dyno units to test e-bike speed, modelled after existing WA e-bike seizure laws. Transport Minister John Graham stated, "If it behaves like a motorbike, it's probably illegal and could end up in the crusher." A two-day safety blitz in NSW last week issued 170 fines for illegal e-bikes, with 40-plus e-bikes swarming Sydney Harbour Bridge in a recent incident. NSW will introduce a minimum age for e-bike riders between 12 and 16, though the exact age is yet to be decided. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Victorian schools will remain open, but many will operate at reduced capacity with limited supervision, while Newscom Australia does not mention Victorian school disruptions. The Guardian states Queensland's e-bike laws will restrict footpath speeds to 10 km per hour and require learners' licences, but Newscom Australia only mentions these as part of Queensland's broader 28 recommendations without specifying footpath speed limits. The Guardian reports Character.ai introduced age assurance measures for Australian users after e-safety engagement, but Newscom Australia does not mention this specific response. This story was covered by The Guardian and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Trump's controversial World War II reference to Japan's Pearl Harbor attack during White House meeting with PM Tate. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump compared the US attack on Iran to Japan's 1941 Pearl Harbor attack, saying we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise during a White House press conference on June 13, 2024. Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi attended a White House meeting with Trump on June 13, 2024, where she visibly reacted uncomfortably to Trump's Pearl Harbor comment. Japan's constitution bans the use of force except for self-defense, limiting its military involvement in conflicts like the Iran War. Japan's self-defense force includes minesweeping ships and surveillance aircraft deployable in the Strait of Hormuz. Trump praised Japan as stepping up to the plate unlike NATO allies regarding the Strait of Hormuz and Iran conflict. But not all outlets told the same story. SMH states Trump's comment was made from the Oval Office during the meeting with Takaichi, while ABC clarifies it occurred during a pre-meeting press conference. SMH describes Trump's shift in tone toward Takaichi as warm affection but frames it as a contrast to his treatment of European leaders, while ABC emphasizes it was far more friendly than toward other allies like Keir Starmer. SMH reports Trump's earlier pledge to Takaichi was anything you want, any favors you need before the Iran attack, but ABC does not mention this specific phrasing. This story was covered by ABC News and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia-EU Free Trade Agreement. Farmers' criticism versus government support. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Australia-EU Free Trade Agreement was finalised after 8 years of negotiations between Anthony Albanese, Australia, and Ursula von der Leyen, EU. The deal removes tariffs from 97.8% of Australian goods exported to the EU, including produce, dairy, machinery, and textiles. Australian beef exporters will gain 35,000 tonnes year to the EU, a 700% boost, while sheep meat exporters will get 31,000 tonnes year, a five-fold increase. The agreement was announced on Tuesday, with the EU stating it would not restart talks if negotiations failed. The National Farmers Federation, NFF, President Hamish McIntyre criticised the deal, calling it a long-term generational agreement with very low volumes for decades. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomau reports beef quotas at 35,000 tons year, while ABC states 30,600 tons year for beef exports under the deal. Newscomau claims sheep meat quotas at 31,000 tons year, but ABC reports 25,000 tons year. Newscomau cites Farrell saying 95% of the Australian industry supports this agreement, but ABC does not reference this statistic and highlights widespread farmer dissent. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's economic risks from US-Iran tensions and domestic policy fallout. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Barry Cassidy and Tony Barry are co-hosting a Guardian podcast analysing economic risks. The RBA, Reserve Bank of Australia, has raised the cash rate. Liberal MP Andrew Hastie has criticised US President Trump's Iran war policy. Treasurer Jim Chalmers is described as opening the door for a potential recession. The article discusses the fuel crisis and its economic fallout in Australia. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's fuel supply crisis amid Middle East war and rising prices. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Energy Minister Chris Bowen stated Australia's fuel supply is fine and provided state-by-state breakdowns of shortages during question time, Article 1. Petrol prices in Australia have risen to over $2.56 per litre due to the Middle East war, Article 1. Hundreds of service stations across Australia are without at least one type of fuel, Article 1, Article 2. Western Australia's Premier Roger Cook acknowledged community anxiety about fuel supply and prices, Article 2. Western Australia's Energy and Decarbonisation Minister Amberjade Sanderson confirmed WA has sufficient fuel supply for April and May, Article 2. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the coalition accused Bowen of not acting like serious people and demanded transparency, while Article 2's opposition leader Basil Zempilas softened his approach, saying he was fully signed up to cross-party cooperation, no direct contradiction but tone shift. Article 1 reports diesel flashpoint standards were relaxed this week, but Article 2 does not mention this detail. Article 1 claims the government argues rationing calls were too soon, while Article 2's opposition leader Basil Zempilas explicitly called for the government to outline hypothetical rationing scenarios, no direct contradiction but differing stances. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's waste sector faces diesel shortages threatening service disruptions and public health risks. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Waste collectors are receiving reduced diesel allocations, with one NSW operator told to expect 12,000 L instead of their usual 50,000 L fortnightly delivery, ABC, Newscomau. West Australian waste operators expect only about half their regular diesel allocations at next refill, ABC, Newscomau. Waste industry leaders are meeting with Assistant Environment Minister Josh Wilson in Canberra to discuss supply and price issues, ABC, Newscomau. The federal government temporarily lowered diesel standards to allow imports from the US, Canada, and Europe, ABC, Newscomau. Waste collectors have been left off the Priority Fuel User List under the Liquid Fuel Emergency Act, ABC, Newscomau. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Federal approval of 600+ new gas wells in Queensland's Surrott-Bowen basins until 2081. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The federal government approved a coal seam gas expansion project, Australia Pacific LNG, in Queensland's Surrott and Bowen basins until 2081. The project includes up to 1,695 new gas wells, 1,545 kilometers of gas and water pipelines, and 3 processing facilities. The project is expected to produce about 2,033 petajoules of gas and operate until 2061, with an extension to 2081 for environmental compliance. The project's public environment report estimated 9 million tons of CO2 emissions during construction and operation, plus 111 million tons from burning the gas. Australia Pacific LNG is a joint venture of ConocoPhillips, Origin Energy, and Sinopec. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states the project's total lifetime emissions are 120 million tons, while ABC does not specify a total but focuses on construction operation, 9M, and burning, 111M. The Guardian highlights the project as the 36th fossil fuel approval under Albanese, while ABC does not mention this specific count. The Guardian emphasises the project's emissions exceed Australia's annual transport emissions, but ABC does not directly compare to transport. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian government urges Fair Work Commission for minimum wage increase above inflation. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Albanese government submitted to the Fair Work Commission's annual wage review asking for an economically sustainable real wage increase for 2.7 million minimum wage and award-reliant workers in Australia. About 2.7 million Australians, roughly a quarter of the nation's workforce, are on the national minimum wage or award-reliant jobs. The current minimum wage is $175.40 per week, higher than when the Albanese government took office in 2022. The Fair Work Commission's upcoming decision on the minimum wage will take effect from July 1st. The Reserve Bank of Australia, RBA, raised the official cash rate to 4.1% on March 17, marking the second consecutive hike in 2026. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states the minimum wage is currently $175.40 per week, higher than in 2022, while ABC does not provide this specific figure. News Kamau does not mention the ACTU's specific 5% wage increase request or ACCI's 3.5% request, which ABC includes. News Kamau does not reference the Business Council of Australia's stance on productivity-linked wage increases, which ABC highlights. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Qantas Jetstar reduces NZ flights due to rising jet fuel prices amid global fuel crisis. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Jetstar is reducing 12% of flights between Auckland and Sydney, and Auckland and Brisbane from May due to rising jet fuel prices. Jetstar has contacted affected passengers directly, offering most same-day travel alternatives. Air New Zealand also reduced flights earlier this month, March 16 to May 3, citing unprecedented volatility in jet fuel prices due to the Middle East conflict. The Middle East conflict is cited as a primary driver of rising jet fuel prices in both articles. Vietnam Airlines plans to cancel 20-plus domestic flights weekly and suspend 7 domestic routes starting next month due to fuel shortages. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Air New Zealand's reductions were due to unprecedented volatility in jet fuel prices, while News Kamau does not specify the exact reason beyond lower demand or off-peak times. ABC reports Vietnam Airlines will cancel 20-plus domestic flights weekly and suspend 7 routes starting next month, but News Kamau does not mention the 7-route suspension. News Kamau states 55 flights have been cut from Jetstar's schedule, while ABC does not specify the exact number beyond 12% of services. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. 2 individuals arrested for attempting to enter UK's Farslane nuclear submarine base. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Two people, a 34-year-old Iranian man and a 31-year-old Romanian woman, were arrested on the 19th of March, 2026 after attempting to enter HM Naval Base Clyde, Fars Lane, Scotland, around 5 p.m. The base houses the UK's Trident nuclear submarines and is not open to the public. Police Scotland confirmed the arrests and stated inquiries were ongoing, with the pair due to appear in Dumbarton Sheriff Court, Guardian, or no further comment given, Royal Navy. The incident occurred on Thursday the 19th of March, 2026, with the man identified as Iranian and the woman's nationality reported as Romanian, Guardian ABC. The Royal Navy previously stated two people unsuccessfully tried to enter the base, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states the woman's nationality is Romanian, while ABC only reports the man is Iranian and the woman's nationality is unknown. The Guardian mentions the incident is not considered particularly serious by the MOD, but ABC does not provide this assessment. The Guardian cites the Sun for the claim the pair acted suspiciously, but ABC does not reference this detail. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia warns Israel against occupying southern Lebanon amid escalating conflict with Hezbollah. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong warned Israel against occupying southern Lebanon in calls with Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar on March 2024. Israel's Defense Minister Israel Katz announced plans to create a security zone between the Israeli border, Blue Line, and the Litani River in southern Lebanon. Over 1,000 Lebanese civilians have been killed since Israel began striking Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, including over 100 children and 40 medics, Lebanon's health ministry figures. More than 1 million Lebanese civilians have been displaced due to the conflict in southern Lebanon. Australia has urged Australians in Lebanon to leave now if safe to do so, with around 15,000 Australians estimated to reside in Lebanon. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and Newscomer both report over 1,000 Lebanese deaths, but ABC specifies 120 children while Newscomer says over 100 children, no exact match. The Guardian mentions Australia's diplomatic mission to Ramallah has been closed for over 7 months, while ABC does not specify the duration but confirms it is closed. ABC and Newscomer both cite Smotrich's calls for annexing Lebanese territory, but only ABC explicitly states Smotrich was sanctioned by Australia for inciting violence and Palestinian human rights abuses. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Stephen Colbert to co-write a new Lord of the Rings film after leaving The Late Show. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Stephen Colbert will co-write a new Lord of the Rings film titled The Lord of the Rings, Shadow of the Past Star. The film will be produced by Peter Jackson, Philippe Arboyens, and Fran Walsh. Colbert's script will follow Sam, Merry, and Pippin retracing early steps of their original adventure, with Sam's daughter Eleanor discovering a long-buried secret about the War of the Ring. Colbert's involvement was announced via a video on social media by Peter Jackson on Tuesday, April 2024. Colbert's The Late Show on CBS will air its last episode on May 21, 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. Guardian Article 1 states Colbert's son is named Peter McGee, while Guardian Article 2 does not mention the son's name or role. Guardian Article 2 questions whether Bombadil will be central to the film's plot, while Guardian Article 1 does not address this speculation. Guardian Article 2 implies the film may retrospectively adapt Tolkien chapters, while Guardian Article 1 states it will take them as inspiration without direct adaptation. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Daily Cherry Evans returned to Manly Warringah as a Rooster amid the club's early season struggles. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Daly Cherry Evans made his first appearance at Brookvale Oval since leaving Manly Warringah for the Roosters in the 2026 NRL season opener against Manly on 2026-04XX, exact date unspecified. The match was played in heavy rain and storm conditions, with power cuts and lightning disrupting the venue an hour before kickoff. Manly Warringah started the 2026 season with a 0-3 record, with all 3 losses occurring at Brookvale Oval. Cherry Evans was booed by Manly fans during warm-ups, team introductions, and throughout the game, including chants like "Cherry's a wanker." Manly's forward pack struggled early in the season, with Jake Trbojevic recording just 8 runs for 70 meters across 3 games, 2 runs in 46 minutes against Roosters. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 and 3 both describe Cherry Evans as being booed throughout the game, but Article 2's live blog does not explicitly state this. It focuses on his steady play and the Roosters' dominance. Article 1 and 3 mention that Cherry Evans was booed in the warm-up, during the team introductions, and as he ran on the field, but Article 2's live blog does not provide this level of detail about the booing's timing or intensity. Article 1 and 3 describe the crowd's frustration turning inward toward coach Anthony Seibold and Jake Trbojevic, but Article 2's live blog does not mention Seibold being targeted by chants. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Boating accident in Tasmania's northwest coast kills 1, 3 rescued after capsizing. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 4 people, 3 adults, ages 27, 33, and 35, and a 6-year-old child were on a fishing trip that departed the Montague boat ramp west of Smithton at approximately 5:30 p.m. on Saturday, June 15, implied date. The vessel capsized around 9 p.m. on Saturday, throwing all 4 occupants into the water off Tasmania's northwest coast near Robbins Passage, Stony Point. 3 survivors, 27-year-old woman, 33-year-old man, and 6-year-old child, were located near Big Stony Island around 1 p.m. on Sunday, June 16, after spending 16 hours in the water. The 3 survivors were wearing life jackets and were taken to Northwest Regional Hospital for observation but were otherwise uninjured. A body, believed to be the 35-year-old man, was found on the eastern side of Robbins Island on Monday, June 17. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC Article 1 states the search was ongoing for the missing man as of Sunday afternoon, but ABC Article 2 and News Kamau confirm his body was found on Monday. ABC Article 1 does not specify the missing man's age or confirm his death, while ABC Article 2 and News Kamau state he was a 35-year-old who died. ABC Article 1 implies the missing man was an unrelated third adult, but ABC Article 2 clarifies he was friends with the family, mother, father, and child. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Top 25 travel experiences and destinations in Asia for Australian visitors. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Asia has 48 countries according to the United Nations, extending from the Indian subcontinent to Central Asia and the Middle East. Indonesia ranked first among Asia's most visited destinations by Australians in 2023, driven by Bali's popularity. Japan, China, Thailand, India, and Vietnam ranked 3rd, 5th, 6th, 8th, and 9th respectively among Asia's most visited destinations by Australians in 2023. Vietnam and Sri Lanka are among Asia's fastest-growing destinations for Australian tourists. Smart Travelers Do Not Travel list includes the Middle East war zones, Myanmar, Afghanistan, Jammu and Kashmir, India, and border areas between India, Pakistan, and Thailand, Cambodia. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the 2 sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Nicolas Maduro's federal court appearance in New York for narco-terrorism charges. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Nicolas Maduro and his wife Cilia Flores are scheduled to appear in a Manhattan federal court on Thursday, the 14th of March, 2019, for a narco-terrorism case. Maduro and Flores were captured by U.S. Special Forces in Caracas on the 3rd of January, 2021 during a pre-dawn raid that reportedly killed 100 people. Maduro and Flores pleaded not guilty during their 5th of January arraignment in New York. Maduro and Flores are currently detained in a Brooklyn detention center and have not requested bail. The U.S. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, initially granted Maduro a waiver on the 9th of January, 2021 to allow Venezuela's government to fund his legal fees, then reversed course 3 hours later. But not all outlets told the same story. Guardian Article 1 states OFAC reversed course 3 hours after granting the waiver, while Guardian Article 3 does not mention the timing of the reversal. ABC claims Trump stated Maduro could face further charges during a cabinet meeting, but Guardian articles do not reference this statement. Guardian Article 1 describes the U.S. military raid as controversial and linked to war crimes concerns, while ABC does not mention legal challenges to the raid's legality. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Arrests and investigation into alleged mistaken identity kidnapping and murder of 85-year-old Chris Bagsarian in Sydney. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Chris Bagsarian, an 85-year-old Armenian grandfather, was allegedly kidnapped from his North Ryde home on February 13th in a case of mistaken identity. His remains were found near a golf club in Pitt Town, northwest Sydney, on February 24th, discovered after 11 days missing. Two men, Gerard Andrews, 29, and Daniel Stevens, 24, were charged with murder and kidnapping with intent to ransom on February 20th. Two additional suspects, a 23-year-old man and a 23-year-old woman, were arrested on March 13th during a search warrant at a Seven Hills property. Police released CCTV footage showing three men near a Dural property, alleged stronghold, on the night of the abduction. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the intended target was a relative of Dimitri Stepanyan, but Newscomau does not mention this detail. Newscomau claims the blue Hyundai was a 2017 model and was found burnt out at Glenbrook railway station, while ABC only refers to it as a blue car without specifying make or model. Newscomau reports the man was arrested in nothing but his underwear, but ABC does not mention this detail. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Italian PM Giorgia Meloni's referendum defeat on judiciary reform and its political fallout. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Giorgia Meloni's government proposed a referendum to reform Italy's judiciary, separating judges and prosecutors and altering the Superior Council of the Judiciary, CSM. The referendum was held over 2 days, Sunday through Monday, with 53.2% to 54% of voters rejecting the reform, while 46.8% to 46% supported it. Turnout reached a record 58.5% to 59% in the referendum, surpassing pre-poll forecasts. Giorgia Meloni's Brothers of Italy party leads in polls at approximately 30%, but her personal approval ratings are now weakened by the defeat. The referendum campaign featured inflammatory rhetoric from Meloni and her ministers targeting the judiciary, framing it as a battle over independence. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian, Article 1, reports turnout at 58.5%, while ABC states it was almost 59%. The Guardian, Article 3, states the referendum result was 53.2% to 46.8%, but Article 1 says 54% to 46%. ABC claims the reform sought to separate the roles of judges and prosecutors and change their oversight body, while The Guardian, Article 3, specifies it would divide the CSM into 2 councils and introduce a lottery system for appointments. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Matildas lose 1-0 to Japan in Women's Asian Cup 2026 final at Stadium Australia. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Women's Asian Cup 2026 final was played at Stadium Australia in Sydney on March 21, 2026, with a crowd of approximately 74,397 fans. Japan defeated Australia 1-0 in the final, winning their third Women's Asian Cup title, previous wins in 2014 and 2018. Maika Hameno scored the only goal of the match for Japan in the first half, a curling shot from outside the penalty area in the 15th minute. Australia's starting lineup included Sam Kerr, captain, Caitlin Ford, Alana Kennedy, Ellie Carpenter, and Mackenzie Arnold, goalkeeper. Joe Montemurro made one key change to the starting 11, replacing Claire Hunt with Winona Heatley at centre-back. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the Matildas' semi-final crowd was 35,170, while The Guardian does not mention the exact number but implies it was close to sellout, 60,000 capacity. The Guardian mentions Japan's 2018 Asian Cup win as their first major trophy since 2018, but ABC and other sources clarify Japan's 2014 win was also a major trophy, making 2018 their second since 2014. ABC describes the Matildas' 2023 World Cup semi-final as a previous high-energy atmosphere, while The Guardian emphasizes the 2026 Asian Cup finals atmosphere as uniquely youthful and optimistic. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Arson attack on Jewish ambulances in London treated as anti-Semitic hate crime. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 4 ambulances belonging to Hatzolah Northwest, a Jewish charity, were set on fire in Golders Green, London, on Monday around 1:45 a.m. local time. The attack occurred near the Matchsike Hadath Synagogue on Highfield Road, Golders Green. Explosions were caused by oxygen cylinders on the ambulances, breaking windows in an adjacent block of flats. Police treated the incident as an anti-Semitic hate crime and counter-terrorism officers led the investigation. CCTV footage suggests at least 3 people were involved in the attack, though only 2 men, aged 45 and 47, were arrested on Wednesday. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 2, Newscamau, states 3 suspects remain at large, while Article 1, Guardian, and Article 3, ABC, clarify that 2 men were arrested and 3 were seen in CCTV footage. Article 2, Newscamau, claims The Sun reports police were called to the scene by the fire service, but no other source confirms this specific detail. Article 5, ABC, explicitly states footage posted on social media appears to show 3 hooded people pouring gasoline, while Article 1, Guardian, and Article 3, ABC, only mention CCTV footage suggesting 3 people were involved without specifying gasoline. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia faces fuel shortages amid relaxed diesel standards and supply chain disruptions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Energy Minister Chris Bowen lowered Australia's diesel flashpoint standard from 61.5 degrees Celsius to 60.5 degrees Celsius for 6 months to increase supply options, ABC, Guardian. Hundreds of service stations across Australia lack at least one type of fuel, with NSW reporting 289 stations without at least one fuel type out of 2,417, ABC, Guardian. In New South Wales, 164 stations are without diesel, ABC, Guardian. Queensland has 55 stations without diesel and 35 without regular unleaded, ABC, Guardian. Victoria has 162 stations with one or more fuel grades unavailable, ABC, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states 6 fuel shipments were cancelled in April with some replaced by alternate sources, but The Guardian says Bowen declined to specify when the government became aware of the cancellations and only called it an iterative process. The Guardian reports Bowen said rationing was not an immediate prospect, while ABC quotes Bowen as saying states and territories had already agreed to coordinate measures over coming weeks and months, implying contingency planning is underway. ABC reports 289 NSW stations lack at least one fuel type out of 2,417, while The Guardian states 109 Victorian outlets are without at least one grade of petrol but does not provide a total number of stations for comparison. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Legal dispute between Kyle Sandilands and ARN Media over $100 million contract termination. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Kyle Sandilands filed legal action in the federal court against ARN Media on March 20, 2024, claiming his $100 million contract was invalidly terminated due to no serious misconduct or breach of contract. ARN Media terminated Sandilands' contract on March 13, 2024, following a 7-minute on-air argument with co-host Jackie O. Henderson on February 20, 2024, where Sandilands called her off with the fairies and accused her of being almost unworkable. ARN Media also terminated Henderson's $100 million contract on March 3, 2024, after her representatives informed the company she could not continue working with Sandilands. Sandilands' contract with ARN was signed in mid-2023 for a 10-year term, with a base salary of $7.4 million annually plus additional benefits including $120,000 for flights and $500,000 in advertising revenue. ARN Media disputes Sandilands' claims and intends to defend the proceedings, stating the termination was due to serious misconduct and that the termination was lawful. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC, Article 2, report that ARN Media issued a notice of termination to Sandilands and Quasar Media, but ABC, Article 3, states ARN terminated Sandilands' contract with Kiss FM directly. ABC, Article 2, states Henderson gave notice she could not continue to work with Sandilands, while ABC, Article 3, notes ARN announced Henderson had given notice but Henderson later denied ever quitting. ABC, Article 3, says Henderson's contract was terminated after she made a workplace health and safety complaint, but ABC, Article 6, states her contract was terminated after her management told ARN she could not work with Sandilands. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis.